The moment I told my boss she was too successful for someone like me, the color vanished from her face, and for one unbearable second, the most powerful woman I had ever known looked as though I had struck her. Sunlight poured through the glass walls of her office, bright enough to expose every emotion we had both spent months trying to hide. I expected her to dismiss me, to straighten the expensive jacket that made her look untouchable, and to remind me that I was only an employee who had crossed a line. Instead, her eyes filled with tears, and she said the words that shattered every excuse I had built around my heart. "You're the one I want." Before I tell you how I nearly walked away from the best thing that ever happened to me, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances. Your support helps our community continue sharing stories that remind us that love often finds us when we feel least worthy of receiving it. My name is Grant Mercer, and at 34, I had become very skilled at staying unnoticed. I worked as a facilities coordinator for Bellwether Design Group, a rapidly growing architectural firm in Portland, Oregon. My job was not glamorous. I made sure conference rooms were ready, contractors arrived on time, broken equipment was repaired, deliveries reached the correct floor, and the building continued functioning while everyone else created beautiful things. Most people barely noticed me unless the coffee machine failed or the air conditioning stopped working. I preferred it that way. Attention had never brought me anything except disappointment. My father had left when I was 12, my mother had worked herself sick keeping our family afloat, and by 22 I had abandoned college to help pay her medical bills. After she died, I kept living as though sacrifice was the only honorable thing I had left. I rented a modest apartment, drove a truck older than some of the interns, and avoided relationships because I believed love eventually became another expense someone had to carry. My boss, Vivienne Hartwell, appeared to belong to another world. At 40, she was the founder and chief executive officer of Bellwether, a company she had built from a rented studio into a respected firm with offices in 3 cities. Business magazines photographed her standing beside glass towers she had helped design. Industry leaders requested her advice. Employees lowered their voices when she passed, not because she was cruel, but because her confidence made everyone suddenly aware of their posture. She wore tailored clothes, spoke with calm precision, and could identify a flawed budget estimate after glancing at it for less than a minute. Yet there were details about Vivienne that the articles never mentioned. She remembered the names of employees' children. She sent handwritten cards when someone lost a family member. She arrived before sunrise-colored light touched the upper windows, even though the story remained firmly within daytime, and she often stayed through the afternoon after everyone else had left for lunch. Success surrounded her, but loneliness followed close behind. Our strange friendship began on a rainy Monday morning when a pipe burst above the presentation suite 2 hours before Bellwether's largest client was scheduled to arrive. Water dripped through ceiling tiles, ruined a section of carpet, and threatened thousands of dollars in equipment. Executives panicked. Vivienne stood in the doorway, watching the disaster with the expression of someone seeing years of work collapse in front of her. I told her I could move the presentation downstairs, redirect the client entrance, contact emergency cleaners, and salvage the meeting. For the next 90 minutes, I ran through the building with a radio in one hand and a tool bag in the other. By the time the clients arrived, the downstairs gallery looked intentional, elegant, and calm. They never knew anything had gone wrong. The company won the contract that afternoon. After the meeting, Vivienne found me kneeling beside the damaged carpet, pulling up soaked padding. She thanked me, but not with the distant politeness executives usually offered support staff. She sat on the edge of a work table, still wearing her formal suit, and asked how I had remained so calm. I told her that when you grow up in a house where something is always leaking, breaking, or overdue, emergencies stop feeling unusual. She laughed softly, and the sound surprised me. It was warm and unguarded. She stayed for nearly 20 minutes, asking about my background and listening as though my answers mattered. That conversation should have been forgettable. Instead, it became the beginning of something neither of us knew how to name. Over the following months, Vivienne began finding reasons to speak with me. She asked my opinion about the employee lounge renovation because she said I understood how people actually used the building. She invited me to planning meetings where no facilities coordinator had ever been included. At lunch, she sometimes appeared in the courtyard carrying 2 sandwiches and claimed the cafe had accidentally given her an extra one. I knew that was not true because she always remembered exactly which sandwich I liked. We talked beneath pale afternoon sunlight about architecture, family, regret, and all the roads we had not taken. She told me her father had treated affection like a reward for achievement. When she earned perfect grades, he praised her. When she struggled, he withdrew. She had built Bellwether partly because she loved design, but also because she believed success might finally make her feel secure. It never had that I began seeing the woman behind the title. Vivienne was afraid of disappointing people. She kept old voice messages from her late grandmother because they reminded her of the only person who had loved her without conditions. She hated eating alone but did it almost every day. She could negotiate a multi-million-dollar contract without blinking, yet she became flustered when complimented sincerely. The more I learned, the more dangerous my feelings became. I found myself waiting for the sound of her footsteps. I noticed when she changed her hairstyle or looked tired. I repaired a loose drawer in her office before she asked because I had seen her struggle with it. One afternoon, she handed me a cup of coffee and our fingers touched. The contact lasted less than a second, but I carried it with me for the rest of the day. Coworkers began noticing. A project manager named Colin Reeves joked that I had become the chief executive's favorite employee. Others suggested I was using our friendship to advance. Their comments should not have mattered, but they reached the deepest insecurity inside me. Vivienne had degrees from prestigious universities, wealthy clients, a beautiful home overlooking the river, and a future that seemed limitless. I had unfinished education, unpaid memories, and a life built around staying small. Every time she smiled at me, part of me felt hope, while another part whispered that people like us were not meant to stand side by side. The conflict finally surfaced during Bellwether's 10th anniversary celebration, which was held in the company's sunlit central atrium on a bright Saturday afternoon. Employees brought their families. Music played softly. Photographs from the firm's early years lined the walls. Vivienne moved among the guests, gracious and composed, but I noticed her glancing toward me again and again. Near the end of the event, she asked me to walk with her to the rooftop garden. The city stretched around us beneath a clear blue sky. Flowering planters swayed in the breeze. She thanked me for helping make the celebration possible, then admitted that the company no longer felt like the most important thing in her life. I knew what she was trying to say, and fear rushed through me. Instead of allowing the moment to become honest, I joked about needing to check the service entrance. Vivienne gently stopped me by placing her hand on my arm. She asked why I always stepped away whenever we became close. I told her the truth, but only the part shaped by shame. I said people were already talking. I said she had a reputation to protect. I said our lives were too different. Her expression tightened, but she asked whether those were my concerns or excuses. I did not answer. For the next 2 weeks, distance grew between us. Vivienne stopped bringing sandwiches to the courtyard. She communicated through email even when her office was a few steps away. Meetings became formal. Her voice remained professional, but the warmth disappeared. I told myself this was better for both of us. Then I learned she was considering an offer to sell part of Bellwether to a national development company and relocate to London for 18 months. The news came through office gossip, not from her, and the realization that she might leave filled me with a grief I had no right to express. During that same period, my younger sister, Paige, visited me at work. She had recently become engaged and wanted my help choosing a location for a small daytime wedding. As we sat in the courtyard, she noticed the way I looked toward the upper office windows. Paige had always been able to read me too easily. I admitted everything, expecting her to agree that a relationship with Vivienne was unrealistic. Instead, she became angry. She reminded me that our mother had not sacrificed her life so I could spend mine believing I was less than everyone else. She said humility and self-rejection were not the same thing. Then she asked the question I could not escape: if Vivienne had been poor, frightened, or struggling, would I have considered her unworthy of my love? I said no. Paige looked at me with tears in her eyes and told me that by deciding Vivienne was too successful for me, I was still judging her by status. I was refusing to see that she had the right to choose what mattered to her. Her words followed me through the building for days. The next turning point came when Bellwether lost a major public project because of a concealed financial error made by a senior executive. The mistake damaged the firm's reputation and triggered a brutal wave of criticism. Reporters gathered outside the building during daylight hours. Clients called with concerns. Several board members blamed Vivienne, even though she had not known about the falsified projections. I watched her move from meeting to meeting, defending employees who were afraid for their jobs. She could have sacrificed the guilty executive publicly and protected herself, but she accepted responsibility as the company's leader while promising a full investigation. By late afternoon, most employees had gone home. I found Vivienne alone in the conference room, surrounded by files and washed in pale sunlight. Her shoulders were slumped, and for the first time since I had known her, she looked defeated. I asked whether she needed anything. She said she needed everyone to stop asking whether she was all right when they clearly expected her to say yes. Then she looked at me and asked why I had abandoned her before anything had even happened between us. The question stripped away every defense I had left. I admitted that I was terrified. I told her I had spent my entire life measuring my worth by what I could provide, and beside her, I felt I had nothing impressive to offer. I confessed that I had mistaken her independence for a lack of need and her success for proof that she could never truly want someone ordinary. Vivienne listened without interrupting. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Then she said she had never asked me for prestige, money, or influence. She had wanted honesty, steadiness, kindness, and the feeling of being seen when everyone else saw only a title. Still trapped inside my fear, I told her she was too successful for me. The word sounded uglier when spoken aloud. Vivienne stood slowly. Sunlight reflected from the windows behind her, but she no longer looked powerful or distant. She looked wounded. She told me that success had never held her when she was lonely. Awards had never noticed when she was exhausted. Money had never made her laugh in the courtyard or repaired a drawer simply because it bothered her. Then, with her voice breaking, she said, "You're the one I want." I had imagined hearing those words more times than I could count, but I had never imagined how much courage they would cost her. For several seconds, I could not move. Then I crossed the room and took her hands. I did not promise that I would suddenly become fearless. I did not pretend our differences would disappear. I told her I wanted her too, but I needed to learn how to stand beside her without seeing myself as smaller. Vivienne said she did not need perfection. She needed me to stop making decisions for her heart. We began slowly. There were no dramatic announcements and no secret meetings hidden in darkness. Everything important happened openly in the daytime. We spoke with the Human Resources Director and established clear professional boundaries. Vivienne transferred my reporting structure to the Chief Operating Officer so our relationship would not affect my position. I enrolled in evening-style coursework offered during flexible daytime sessions to complete the degree I had abandoned, not because Vivienne demanded it, but because I finally understood that honoring my potential was different from trying to earn love. She attended my first campus orientation and sat beside me in a sunny lecture hall, looking prouder than she had at any business awards ceremony. The financial scandal changed Bellwether, but it did not destroy it. The responsible executive was dismissed after an independent investigation, and Vivienne publicly apologized for the failures in oversight. She rejected the relocation offer and chose to rebuild the company with greater transparency. Some clients left, but others respected her honesty. I watched her learn that leadership did not require carrying every burden alone. She watched me learn that being dependable did not mean disappearing. There were difficult moments. I sometimes felt uncomfortable at formal events where people discussed investments, international travel, and universities I had only seen in brochures. Vivienne sometimes assumed she could solve practical problems with money when what I needed was patience. We argued, apologized, and tried again. The difference was that neither of us ran away. Love did not erase our insecurities. It gave us a safe place to confront them. A year later, on a bright spring afternoon, Paige married her fiancé in the Bellwether rooftop garden. White flowers lined the walkway, and sunlight turned the city windows gold. I stood beside Vivienne as my sister exchanged vows. During the reception, Paige pulled me aside and asked whether I finally understood what our mother had wanted for me. I looked across the garden at Vivienne, who was laughing with my family while holding a paper cup of lemonade. She was still accomplished, admired, and ambitious. I was still learning, rebuilding, and occasionally afraid. But I no longer believed love required two people to arrive with equal resumes. It required two honest hearts willing to grow. Later that afternoon, Vivienne and I stood near the same place where I had once stepped away from her. She told me she had spent much of her life believing she would be loved only for what she achieved. I told her I had spent mine believing I could be loved only for what I sacrificed. Somehow, we had found each other between those two wounds. I asked her whether she still wanted someone ordinary. She smiled and reminded me that kindness was not ordinary, loyalty was not ordinary, and making another person feel safe was never ordinary. Before this story ends, please leave a meaningful comment about a time when fear made you feel unworthy of love, success, or a second chance. Your words may help someone in our family realize they are not alone. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. 2 years after that painful conversation in her office, I completed my degree. The graduation ceremony took place beneath the warm afternoon sun. When my name was called, I searched the crowd and found Vivienne standing beside Paige, clapping with tears streaming down her face. She was not proud because I had finally become successful enough for her. She was proud because I had stopped hiding from my own life. After the ceremony, we walked across the campus lawn while families took photographs around us. Vivienne reached into her bag and handed me a small box. Inside was the broken brass handle from the office drawer I had repaired during our first months of friendship. She had kept it as a reminder of the man who noticed what everyone else overlooked. Beneath it was a simple note telling me that I had never needed to become more worthy of love. I had only needed to believe her when she chose me. I held her beneath the clear afternoon sky, surrounded by laughter, sunlight, and the future we had almost lost. In that moment, I understood that real love does not ask which person is more successful. It asks whether two people can see beyond fear, status, and old wounds long enough to recognize the home they have found in each other. Vivienne had never needed me to match her achievements. She needed me to trust her heart. And once I finally did, I discovered that I was not standing beneath her or behind her. I was exactly where she had wanted me all along, beside her.